All right. So we talked about last week how the Torah and the mitzvos is our access point of how to connect to Hashem. There's a lot of hishtalshlus, a lot of devolution in the process of these holy entities, the Torah and the mitzvahs, coming to us, to be accessible to us. And every detail of every halacha, of every law in every mitzvah is um, brought down to us, and it's a special opportunity. It's a gateway. It's a channel through which we're able to connect to Hashem. We're up to the words "uvitzirufei oisius gashmis." About midway down the page on the online Tanya. Now, Alter Rebbe continues of "uvitzirufei oisius gashmis b'jayala sefer," and with the combination of physical letters put into ink in a book. In other words, Hashem created the Aleph Beis, the letters, the Hebrew letters of the alphabet, and every letter, every word is comprised of a variety of letters, and each set of combination of different types of letters make up different words. And when you put them into ink and put on a parchment, especially the words comprised of letters in the Esrim V'Arba Sefarim, the 24 books Shebeseira Nevi'im Uchsuvim that are in the 5 books of Torah and the books of the prophets and the writings. So in other words, Hashem's will that we talked about last week does not only come into physical objects through which we do the mitzvah, like the parchment of a mezuzah scroll, or the leather of tefillin that we wear, or the wine that we make kiddush on, and things like that, which most mitzvahs are involved with physical things. But the actual object of the Torah, the written Torah, which is written with physical ink, is also something physical that we could hold on to. So that every mind can grasp it. So the reason why the Torah traveled and descended from the world of Atzilus, where in Atzilus, what's the neshama busy with? What's its occupation? Its occupation is godliness. Its occupation is supreme wisdom. But it took a trip. It went on an excursion and decided to go down here into this physical world, so that the primary study of Torah down here is dealing with practical law, things that have to do with physical matter. And that is so that the mind of every single Jew who finds himself in this world, regardless of the level of his soul and its capacity to explore and appreciate godliness, and regardless of the person's own intellectual prowess, is able to absorb and contain the wisdom of the Torah, which is God's wisdom. Let me put that in different words. When the soul is up above, it's perceiving godliness. It's on a totally godly plane, irrespective of anything physical, no connection to anything physical. But the Torah, the way it comes into this world, is talking about, the dimensions for how big a sukkah should be. And you have to take out a measuring tool and you have to start measuring. The sukkah has to be less than 20 amos, and it has to be a minimum of 10 handbreadths and things like that. So, everybody knows how to use a measuring stick, right? You don't have to be a godly person to know what 10 handbreadths are, right? So the Torah is coming down into our very human, physical minds. And even the speech and action, which is lower than the level, the garment of thought, meaning not only are our minds able to connect with God's wisdom, but also our speech and our actions are able to connect with God's wisdom and are able to hold on to godliness. And that's all thanks to the excursion that the Torah made in coming into this physical world and And that gave us the ability that not only is our minds able to grasp God's wisdom, but even our speech and our deed, meaning speaking words of Torah and doing mitzvahs, although they are lower than the power of thought, because speech and deed are physical things, nevertheless, that is the way through physical things, that is how a person is able to connect with Hashem. So contrary to people who might go to Woodstock or wherever, go to some ashram and try to connect to God in a spiritual way, by detaching from this world and not having and ignoring the physical world. Instead, we are connecting to God through physicality, by way of physicality. That is the way a person is able to connect with the ultimate spirituality. So even somebody who is not a great Torah scholar is able to connect with Hashem in a very literal, practical way by doing Torah, by doing the mitzvos in speech and in deed. So, in summary, even though no creature is worthy of and is capable of actually holding on to godliness, however, Hashem limited and enclosed his will and wisdom into the 613 practical commandments, and that gives every Jew the ability to indeed hold on to and take a grasp of godliness. Because when we use our human intellect to understand Torah, which is Hashem's wisdom, and when we do a mitzvah with a physical object, which is Hashem's will, you are actually holding on to, you are getting dressed in, you are putting on the garments of Hashem's will and wisdom, which is completely infinite. Now, since Hashem's will and wisdom is all one with Hashem, so really when you learn Torah and do those mitzvahs, you are becoming one with Hashem. So thank God for the tzimtzum, for the excursion that the Torah made to come down here, because that's our greatest access point to godliness. Now the Rebbe continues. Now, since the Torah and its mitzvos enclose the 10 powers of the soul and all its 613 limbs, right? Because we said the soul has these spiritual limbs, so to speak. From head to toe of the soul. So now the soul, when it's involved in a mitzvah or learning Torah, it's bound up in the bundle of Hashem, literally. So we said before that when a person fulfills the Torah and mitzvahs with a true fulfillment, his 10 soul powers are being invested, like the word vest, meaning enclosed into the 3 garments of thought, speech, and deed. Meaning the 10 soul powers are being enclosed into the 613 commandments of the Torah. So, in other words, a person is connecting one of the limbs of his soul with one of the 613 limbs of Hashem, because the 613 commandments of the Torah are really parallel, or not parallel. They are the limbs of the king. They are Hashem, because the Torah and Hashem is one. So when you do one of those 613, one of your soul powers is being connected with one of God's limbs, so to speak. And when a person merits to fulfill in practice all of the physical mitzvahs, and he speaks and is studying and involved in explaining the 613 mitzvahs and their commandments, and in his mind he's thinking what he can about the Torah, through that he is taking all of his 10 soul powers and enclothing them in the and putting them really into the bind of connectivity to Hashem. And when you do that, says the Alter Rebbe, v'oir Hashem mamash makifa umalbisha meirosha v'adragla. And the light of Hashem literally is surrounding it and enclothing it from head to toe. So there's a twofold connection that happens here between a Jew and Hashem. There's one point of the connection that shows on something that happens to the person, and one that happens to Hashem. Hold on. So we said there's two connections that a person has with Hashem. One's from the human side, one's from the godly side. Number one, from the human side, through that, by a person enclothing the powers of his soul in Torah mitzvahs, meaning investing his soul powers into Torah mitzvahs, he is connecting his soul powers with Hashem, because Hashem and the Torah is one. And so his soul is bound up in the life of Hashem. And then on the other side, from Hashem's angle, so to speak, when a yid is involved in Torah mitzvahs, Hashem gives him a special light into his soul. So Hashem's light surrounds him from head to toe. So there's one thing that you're going into the bundle of Hashem, and then there's another thing where Hashem surrounds you from head to toe. And how do you see that there's really two elements over here, and they're not just, I mean, it's two sides of the same coin, but how do we see these two sides, biblically speaking? So you bring some sources, like it says in Tehillim, and also brought in the book of Samuel, my rock, I will be protected in him. So this is the first. So this is a reference to the first idea, that a person connects his powers to Hashem to the point that we are bound up in Hashem. In other words, we're like covered in Hashem's shadow, so to speak. And what does that mean in Hasidic terminology? It means that a person is doing everything that he can to connect his soul to Hashem with Torah mitzvahs. And he is sort of, ducking for cover or going underneath the shade of Hashem to the point that there is no part of his soul that is not completely covered and protected, so to speak, and connected to Hashem. And then on the other side, uksiv katzina ratzain tatrenu, like a shield. Ratzain tatrenu. So what does this mean? It says in Tehillim in chapter 5, the last verse, it says, Kiata tavarich tzadik Hashem, Hashem, you will bless the righteous. Katzina ratzin tatrenu. So katzina means a shield which surrounds the three sides of a person, right? Meaning it's kind of like a tent. And then ratzain, which means a pleasure. Nachas ruach and tatrenu means you'll surround them. That means that Hashem surrounds the righteous from all sides because of his great pleasure and delight that he's having with what this person is doing. That is one explanation of what this pasuk means. But again, the Hasidic interpretation of ratzain tatrenu doesn't just mean that the pleasure that the delight that Hashem has causes him to cover us and surround us, but it means the ratzain, by us fulfilling the ratzain, the will of Hashem, which is learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, then that ratzain, that Torah and mitzvahs, the will and wisdom of Hashem surrounds the righteous like a shield. So again, there's the element of the person going for cover, going into the bundle of God, but then there's also on the other side, you have God surrounding the person like a shield, meaning going in to protect us. So, in short, we have the following question. We know that Hashem is unlimited, that there's no way to really hold on to Hashem. We cannot grasp Hashem's will and wisdom. So how is it possible to say that through Torah mitzvahs a person is able to grasp Hashem literally? And the answer that Alter Rebbe explains is that Hashem did something called a tzimtzum. He constrained and devolved his will and wisdom, which are truly infinite, and somehow was able to enclose them, to invest them into the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah and all of their laws, and into the letters of all the words of the 24 books of the Tanakh. And that's why the Torah is compared to water, which come down from a high place to a low place. Naturally, water gravitationally goes downwards, as opposed to fire, which goes upwards. Why is the Torah referred to as water? Because the Torah comes through a process of devolution from a much higher place, from infinity into this world, all the way into this physical world and matter of this world. And that's a tremendous symptom. It's a tremendous constriction and limitation, which is done with a purpose. The purpose is that a person who's a physical person is able to bring God's wisdom into his mind, and he's able to connect with Hashem's will, with the words in his mouth and with the actions with his hands. Now, when a person takes his 10 soul powers with all its details and invests them into the thought, speech, and deed of a mitzvah, of learning Torah, so what happens then is that this attachment that a person has with Hashem, done by learning Torah and doing a mitzvah, affects and permeates the entire soul from head to toe, all 10 powers of the soul. And so the entire soul is connected with Hashem, literally, and the light of Hashem is also surrounding it from head to toe. Now we'll go to the next part of chapter 4, where the Alter Rebbe explains that the connection that a person has with Hashem through Torah mitzvahs in this world, meaning in this physical world with a soul inside a body, is actually much more beautiful than any spiritual experience that the soul has in the afterlife. So, as opposed to other streams of thought, let's call it, that value this life only as a means to achieve something in the afterlife, and that we need to be good because we're going to go to heaven or something like that. Certainly heaven does exist. Certainly there is an afterlife. In that part we don't disagree. But the purpose is, and the greatest achievement is not the afterlife. The greatest achievement is right here in attaching to God in this physical world. And this is not just a Hasidic concept, but it's actually a matter of Jewish law. We see this in Ethics of Our Fathers, Pirkei Avot, in chapter 4, the Alter Rebbe quotes here. V'lachein amru, and therefore our sages teach us in Ethics of Our Fathers, Yafa sha'a achas b'tshuva u'maisim tovim. Ba'olam hazeh, it's much more beautiful to spend 1 moment or 1 hour in this world doing tshuva, doing good deeds, mikol chaye ha'olam haba, greater than all the life in the world to come. And this is all because we explain of the great connection that a Jew has with Hashem by doing a mitzvah. So it makes perfect sense what our sages are saying here. Now, it might not be so obvious. Why not? Because seemingly one could ask, how could it be that a physical act in a physical world with physical objects will be much more beautiful than things in the world to come, which are completely spiritual? And so the commentaries explain, meaning the non-Hasidic commentaries explain as follows. They say that from all the life in the world to come means that all the life in this world is for the purpose of reaching the world to come, because in that time they won't need tshuva and good deeds, because the world to come is really just a reward and a payment for everything that you did in this world. And that's certainly true. And the commentaries say that the Mishnah is not saying that tshuva and good deeds in this world is greater than the next world, but the time that a person finds himself in this world is beautiful, is more beautiful and greater than the world to come, because only in this world you're able to achieve a portion in the world to come by doing the mitzvah here. However, in the world to come, that's only a place of reward, and you can't do anything anymore. That's it. You can't cash in anything more. You can only cash that in when you're in this world by doing actual mitzvahs. That is the non-Hasidic interpretation. However, a deeper explanation of this Mishnah is that the tshuva and the good deeds in this world, they themselves, regardless of any future reward, they themselves are greater than any experience in the world to come, because there's a tremendous benefit in doing tshuva and doing good deeds in this world, greater than all the spiritual achievements that'll happen in the world to come. Why is that? So the Alter Rebbe continues, Ki olam haba hu shenen in miziv hashchina. Because the world to come is that which we derive pleasure from, the shine, the glory of the divine presence, which is the pleasure of perception, the pleasure of appreciating something, meaning the pleasure of the soul in the future world is the pleasure that it has from achieving and understanding godliness. And no creature here in this world, even the highest creatures in more spiritual worlds, cannot achieve anything but just a ray and a glimpse, a glimmer of the light of Hashem. And that's why it's only called a shine of the Shekhinah. So we have two terms. We have the light of Hashem, literally, which we said before, and we have the ray of the light of Hashem. So the light of Hashem literally is God's glory being revealed. The ray of the light of Hashem is just an offshoot. It's just a limited expression of godliness. Now, no creation, no creature, not even an angel, is able to reach even a ray and a glimmer of the light of Hashem. And so even when the soul goes above, and it's beyond the limitations of the body, it's not able to achieve God's glory itself. And the only pleasure it has is from achieving a ray of the light of Hashem. And that's why when we talk about the souls in the Garden of Eden, in the world to come, it says that they benefit and they derive pleasure from the ray of the Shekhinah, a shine of the Shekhinah, meaning they only get a glimmer and a glimpse of the Shekhinah. However, but the essence, says the Alter Rebbe, the essence of Hashem in its full glory, that can't be held on to. As the Zohar says, no thought can hold on to him at all. And so that's true in regards to the actual essence and glory of God. But there's one exception, meaning the ray couldn't be achieved in the world to come. The essence cannot be achieved. It's unachievable, not even in the world to come, and certainly not in this world, unless is the big unless. Unless it is holding on to and investing in the Torah mitzvahs, then it is investing into the I think it's referring to meaning the soul powers are being invested into the garments of the soul, which is investing in Hashem, literally, because Hashem and His Torah are all one. So, yes, it's true that if we stay where we are and Hashem is where He is, we, as limited creatures, cannot reach and associate and connect with Hashem's essence at all. But that's only a limitation on our part. However, Hashem, being truly infinite, is able to make the infinite finite and is able to make the infinite achievable. And how did He do that? Special invention called the Torah and mitzvos. And through that invention that Hashem made, it's a special tool that only Hashem knows how to make. And He was able to give us that access point to connect to Him, and not just to connect to a ray of Him as we will after 120, but we get to connect with Hashem's essence. And so that's what it means, that this world is more a moment of a mitzvah, a moment of a good deed, a moment of an act of tshuva, is greater than the world to come. In the world to come, you're just going to get a ray and a shine, you know? But in this world, when we do a mitzvah and we access those special access points that Hashem gave us, that is clearly that is completely incomparable to anything else. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you all next week.